Number 9. Bathroom shootout. On April 12, 2021, an unnecessary and terrible tragedy occurred at Austin East Magnet High School in Tennessee. A police officer walked into a restroom and shot 17-year-old Anthony J. Thompson Jr. to death. Police received a call from Anthony's ex-girlfriend's mom claiming Anthony had been physically abusing her daughter. This is a very serious allegation, and so 4 officers responded to the call and went to the school to see what Anthony had to say about it. When they got there, Anthony was loitering in the school's bathroom. The officers went in to make the arrest, unaware that Anthony had a loaded gun in his pocket. As they handcuffed the young man, Anthony's gun went off and a bullet struck a trash can. But the sound of the gunshot caused such confusion in the small bathroom that the police thought their lives were in danger. Officer Claybo pulled out his gun and shot the teenager, who then collapsed dead on the floor. The whole thing was out of control. Not only did the officer freak out when he heard a gunshot, he immediately shot a teenager who was already in handcuffs. But that's not all. He also shot another officer. After Anthony collapsed, Officer Claybo fired again and struck another officer in the leg. Then they wasted time arresting a student who was hiding in a stall when the cops came in because he was terrified, instead of tending to Anthony, who was bleeding out. It took the officers over 60 seconds just to realize the teenager had even been shot. Oh, and no criminal charges are to be filed against the officer for killing a teenager in a school bathroom. Number 8. Intimate with the inmates. In 2016, Tina Gonzalez began working as a corrections officer at the Fresno County, California prison. She was only 26 years old, but Tina was later arrested in May of 2020. Basically, someone who was hired to work within the jail was herself put in jail. What led to Tina's arrest? Apparently, the cops received information stating that she had been engaging in sexual activities with one of the inmates. And guess what? There were plenty of witnesses to prove it. Tina had gone so far as to cut out a slit in her uniform for, easy access. It was also later discovered that she had smuggled a cell phone into the county jail as well. Not just that though, she had razors which may have been used as weapons too. Her previous supervisor, Assistant Sheriff Steve McComas, had seen many things throughout his 25-plus years as an officer, but he felt that learning about an officer having sexual intercourse with an inmate was the most disgusting yet. According to him, only a depraved mind can come up with something like that. He also claimed that she breached an oath, endangering the lives of her co-workers. McComas said in court that Gonzalez did not appear to be apologetic for her conduct. In June of 2021, Tina Gonzalez was sentenced to 2 years probation and 7 months in prison. Earlier this year, she pleaded no contest to engaging in sexual behavior with a consenting confined adult. Her lawyer stated she was in a vulnerable situation when her marriage collapsed. But honestly, that doesn't justify her actions. Number 7. Model policewoman. Samantha Sepulveda has over 100,000 Instagram followers. She's also a police officer in Freeport, Long Island. She's a petite brunette and so beautiful she says criminals aren't even upset when she's the one who arrests them. She almost never has to get into any of the fights with the perps. Instead, she bats her eyes and uses her good looks to convince them to put on the cuffs. Samantha claims her curves and the way she looks makes her job a lot easier because there's less aggression and hostile situations are diffused more easily. Samantha began her modeling career in 2013 and has traveled all over the world to do photo shoots. It was only a few years earlier that she became a policewoman. In an interview, Samantha talked about the time when she was phoned in to deal with a man who had just beaten up his wife and was threatening to kill the police. When Samantha started chasing him, the man was so overwhelmed by her beauty that he stopped in his tracks and allowed her to arrest him. Then, the scumbag asked her out on a date. Number 6. Taking the bribe. Officer Michael Mosley lost his job when he was indicted by a federal grand jury on 2 counts of bribery. According to United States Attorney Matthew Schneider, the dirty cop took $15,000 in bribes from the very crooks he should have been arresting. Michael had been on the force for 20 years, but in April of 2019, it all started going downhill. On April 3rd, he performed a search in a drug trafficker's residence. During the search, he discovered cocaine and heroin, a lot of it, as well as a bunch of illegal firearms. The drug trafficker confessed that he had even more drugs hidden away and even signed a confession. But what's really bizarre was that Michael stayed in contact with the drug trafficker afterwards, and the trafficker didn't end up doing any jail time. The dealer offered Michael $15,000 in cash to not pursue charges. And on May 2nd, Michael Mosley collected $10,000 in cash that had been left by the criminal in the backyard of some abandoned house in Detroit. Then on May 23rd, the officer collected another $5,000 in cash. In return, Michael gave the original copy of the signed confession to the drug trafficker, basically letting him go. Each bribery charge carries a maximum 10-year sentence. The officer probably won't get 20 years in prison after serving on the force for 2 decades, but he's definitely not allowed to carry a badge anymore. How much would it take for you to turn into a dirty cop? Tell us in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 5. Stealing a body. On November 1st, 2021, an off-duty police officer in New Jersey hit and killed a man while he was driving down the Garden State Parkway. But instead of calling it in and handling it right away, he put the body in his car and drove away. Yep, he literally stole the corpse of the person he had run over. The murderous officer is 25-year-old Luis Santiago. Luis had only become an official cop 2 years earlier in 2019. For some reason, on that fateful night, he was driving on the shoulder of the road at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when he struck Damian Dimka. The cop loaded the victim into the car with the help of his passenger, a guy named Albert. They didn't call the police or even try to administer first aid. With a dead body in the trunk, the 2 men drove to Lewis's parents' house to discuss with the rest of the family what they should do. But because Lewis's father is a Newark police lieutenant, he was not about to let his son get away with this. His father forced him to go back to the scene of the crime, and then he narked him out to the police. His own father. He has since been suspended without pay and is facing charges of vehicular homicide, desecrating human remains, leaving the scene of a crash, and endangering an injured victim. Number 4. Baby Shark. 2 county jail keepers and their supervisor were charged with torturing prisoners. They repeatedly forced them to listen to the viral catchy song Baby Shark repeatedly. Greg Butler Jr. and Christian Miles allegedly made 4 convicts stand in cells, shackled to a wall, and listen to the children's song on a loop. This happened at the Oklahoma County Detention Center. The song was set to play loudly and repetitively, which caused unnecessary mental stress on the prisoners, who were probably suffering from physical pressure as well from the shackles. Apparently, this was used to teach the convicts a lesson. Christopher Hendershot, the guard shift commander, was fully aware of what the guards were doing. He willfully disregarded inmate complaints to get the guards to stop tormenting them. Even though the music was, quote, a joke between 2 guards, the penalty might be deemed as torture under the law. Miles and Butler have been charged with misdemeanor counts of inmate cruelty, physical punishment, and conspiracy. All 3 guards were removed from any further interaction with prisoners, and during the hearing, they all decided to voluntarily leave the department. Number 3. Smuggling. Gary Hayward had become a prison officer at New York's Rikers Island in 1996. The former Marine's purpose was to start paying off his debts, his expenses, and child support payments. But being a prison guard doesn't really pay. On average, they make only $28,000 a year. So, what did Gary do? When a prisoner came to him and offered him $300 for 1 pack of cigarettes, Gary made the exchange. He reasoned it, saying the guards had cigarettes on them all the time, so it wouldn't be hard to get it to the convict. Then it happened again and again. Soon he started paying his bills and his child support payments. Gary became a go-to guard for the contraband. The extra money gradually developed into greed, like it always does. There came a time when one of the convicts offered him $1,500 for smuggling in roughly a half ounce of cocaine, so Gary was sneaking that in on the regular too, as well as cell phones and other items. He simply strapped it in under his uniform and nobody suspected a thing. But it all comes crashing down eventually. Gary was caught after a prisoner turned him in. This led to Gary serving 2 years in jail. While he was inside, he wrote a book called Corruption Officer: From Jail Guard to Perpetrator Inside Rikers Island. He even wrote about a sex ring racket that was controlled by a female correctional officer trio. His work significantly damaged the reputation of the entire department. Number 2. 2 girlfriends. In April of 2019, an officer who was on his 3rd year of duty with the San Antonio Police Department was put on administrative leave. The reason was pretty simple. Nicolette Muniz was arrested on suspicion of family violence and assault and subsequently charged. The incident happened on a Friday at 3 o'clock in the morning when Nicolette got into an argument with her boyfriend, Kenneth Moreno. She learned that he had been cheating on her by sleeping with someone else on the side. But when everything is broken down, it's a little confusing whose boyfriend this guy actually was. He definitely had a romantic relationship with both of them, but wasn't technically with Nicolette when the attack happened. Nicolette had called Kenneth, but his other girlfriend answered the phone instead of Moreno. The 2 women got into a fight, and Nicolette said, quote, "I bet you won't say that to my face," end quote, and the other woman told her her home address. So, Nicolette showed up outside the woman's home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was not kidding either. As soon as the woman came out, she beat her up. The charges were eventually dropped against Nicolette, but she was given a no-contact order with her ex and told by her department to stay away from him. Yikes! Number 1. Shoplifting. In June 2019, a security guard working for a Boston fashion retailer got in a lot of trouble for the way he handled a shoplifter. The security guard, Mohammed Khan, was charged with assault and battery on a child under the age of 14 after beating up an 11-year-old who had tried to shoplift. Say what? Yep, according to Sharice Williams, the victim's mother, her daughter had tried to get away with stealing some socks. The preteen took the socks and made her way towards the door. She didn't even make it out of the store before the security guard grabbed her. To make the incident even more traumatic for the young girl, the security guard wasn't dressed like a security guard. He was wearing normal clothes, so the girl thought it was some random man trying to kidnap her. Mohammed grabbed her, pushed her into a corner, and then punched her in the face. He had her by the neck, straddling her as he repeatedly punched her in the face. This guy is over 6 feet or 180 centimeters tall and weighs over 200 pounds, right at 90 kilograms. This is very obviously not an appropriate reaction for a security guard stopping a young girl, or even an adult for that matter, just because she took socks. He was under explicit orders from his employer to never lay hands on a customer, even a shoplifter. He had also been warned 4 times previously for inappropriate behavior. This child is now traumatized and in counseling, and the security guard is facing jail time. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be forced to listen to Baby Shark for a whole week or eat only prison food for 3 months? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.